Welcome back, everyone. And if this is your first time visiting my channel, I am Rita and I demonstrate how to paint with pastels. With today's lesson, I will show you how to start with an alcohol underpainting technique that will give you a solid base to build your pastels on. So let's not wait any longer and let's get started. Hi everyone, I'm using Uart sanded paper, and the reference photo I'm using is in the upper right hand corner, and it comes from a site called Paint My Photo by Tone. So to begin this project, I'm using a light grayish blue for the background water line, and then I'm going to apply some soft greens for the upper layer of the cresting wave, and I will also use a little lighter colors in the lower portion of the wave as it begins to roll over. The the water will be darker underneath the cresting wave, and it's actually a created shadow from the overturning wave. Also, I will continue to use these shades of green to extend into the water washing onto the shore. I will leave the white foam and churning surf as the last color I use to give it the final wave details. I'm going to leave the white water area empty for now, and I'm going to focus on filling in the beach sand. I'm going to use some beige to create the beach, and I'm going to apply the color around the boat, and I will come back to the boat later in this painting. So now that I have color applied to my paper, I'm going to use a rubbing alcohol as a wash to blend and dissolve the pigment in the color. I am using a 91% isopropyl alcohol for this process, and all I want to do is blend everything very smoothly and work on one area at a time so that I'm not making the colors a muddy color. I want my water to be a little bit darker at the top of the crest of the wave, and that's why I start at the wave and work my way back. It doesn't need to be very smooth. In fact, some of the brush strokes can actually apply some texture to the painting, so we don't want to remove all of the texture. I'm going to work around the edge of the boat, and where the shadow is being cast will be a little bit darker as I blend this sandy beach together. The alcohol wash dries very quickly, so that's why I like using it, and you can actually see it drying as I'm finishing this process. So all of my shapes have been mapped out, and I can begin working on the wave. I'm going to define the shadowed area beneath the wave a little bit more. I also want to use some of the light green in the background water, and I will also use some light blue and light gray to create some soft wave texture in the background. I don't want to give it too much detail. I just want to suggest a soft movement of the water. I am building my shapes and colors very gradually, and I will always be coming back to these areas throughout this demonstration. I'm going to move on and begin developing the large wave. I'm going to apply some darker green to the base of the wave and use my blending sponge applicator to blend it very smoothly. So now we have a clear definition between the cresting wave and the troughed area of the wave. I am going to use a light gray and a light green to begin shaping the whitewater areas of the wave. This will begin shaping the wave and provide some movement in the water. I will blend and shape this area with my sponge applicator and add some more white to it to give it a little bit more fullness as the water begins to splash and surge along the shoreline. So for now I'm just blocking in the area, and I will continually shade and add more color to the wave. I think this area is blocked in sufficiently for a little while, so I want to shade the area beneath this surging water before I finish the actual churning white water. I'm going to use some very light violet, light blue, and some light gray to create some trails in the surging water on the shoreline. These trails of white foam float on top of the water, and they create the long finger-like streams and trails as the water flows in and recedes into the wave. Some of this foam can be very thick, especially at the very edge of the waterline. These trails of foam are very thin as they recede beneath the wave. And it also adds some perspective to the painting and creates more depth into the painting. I would like to move on now and create the sandy beach area. I'm using a dark beige color to create the texture of the sand. I want to use some cool and warm colors to create the texture and shading in the beach sand. I will continue to use the slate blue as the shadowed area beneath the boat, and I will use some lighter shades of light blue and violets to create the highlights and shimmers in the sand. It looks like I covered up my seagull, so I will place him again. I'm going to finish the boat before I work on the beach sand, and I will begin by applying a light layer of the gray inside the boat and shades of blue for the entire outline. I will slowly build up the layers of color and blend them and add other colors to create the highlights that are also reflected in the daylight sun. I'd like to give the boat a cleaner and newer appearance than it was in my reference photo. So please follow along while I finish some of these boat details. I'm going to add some more shading beneath the boat, and I'll blend it lightly and begin adding some of the sand texture found on the beach. Some of this blue shading represents the water running off the edge of the wave. There is also a rope that is tied to the boat that is slightly buried under the sand that I've began to develop here. And now I think it would be a good time to work on the seagull before I finish the sand around him. The seagull is rather small in the painting, so I won't apply too much detail to it, but I will try to sufficiently add enough shading and detail to give it a very realistic appearance. So for the next couple minutes, I'll add some sand texture, shading, and some trails of water that is flowing over the beach. Now that the entire painting has a good base, it's much easier to step back and look at the entire painting to figure out what it needs and which areas to work on. It is also much easier to blend and harmonize the colors in the painting when you can see the entire scene. I'm going to add some of the light fingers of foam that flow up into the wave, and also add some of the darker greens into the overturning wave. So please follow along for a moment as I try to establish more movement and texture to the overturning wave. I'm going to add some more sea foam to the shoreline, and I also want to add some more shallow water that is spilling over the edge of the shoreline. I will use a light shade of blue to indicate these very shallow shoreline pools of water, and use some white to give it some highlight from the sun. At this point, I'm going to begin adding the final details to define some of the areas more clearly. I hope you have enjoyed this demonstration of painting an ocean wave on the beach. It's important not to overwork any one area too much, but to gradually build each section to create a harmonizing painting. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and press the bell icon to receive notifications of all my new content. Thank you for watching and hope to see you soon.